Hey winner, I'm so glad that you tuned in to Red Hot Mindset today, and I have got a special treat for you. The guest today exudes all things positivity and gratitude. She is an excuse remover, and there's a story behind it, and I get to share it with you today. Now, before we go any further, I wanted to ask you if you are liking these episodes so far, if you've been tuning in for a while, would you consider leaving a review for me? Because this is a way that other people can find the podcast, other women can find it and listen and be blessed. And if you like today's episode, make sure to take a screenshot and share it on your favorite social media platform. If you're on Insta, tag me at Red Hot Mindset. So this podcast has been running for about 6 months now, and it has been a joy for me to do. I have really loved being able to sit down and talk with other women about their struggle victory stories and to be able to bring mindset on the solo episodes. So I'm hoping that you are enjoying it. If you are, feel free to share it out and let's bring other women into the community. So I have to ask myself, how many times have I made excuses because I didn't feel like it? Or I don't think I have what it takes? Or maybe it just seems too hard. But God wants to use our weaknesses, our pains, our trials, and He wants to turn them into our message. Today's guest is a perfect example of this. A flesh-eating bacteria left her in a 3-week coma, and she lost all 4 of her limbs, becoming a quadruple amputee. Life would never be the same as she once knew it, but after a while, she chose to use her experience to empower others in gratitude and kindness and positivity and faith, and that is when One Exceptional Life was born. Wendy Wallace is a wife, mom, Christian inspiration blogger, and an author. She is also a quadruple amputee. You can find her at oneexceptionallife.com, where she blogs about overcoming challenges, Christian living, gratitude, kindness, positivity, and amputee life. I'm really excited to dive into her story today, and I do think that you will be blessed through it. So let's get chatting. Welcome, Wendy. I'm so glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Gabe. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I look so forward to hearing a little bit more about your story. But before we go into it too far, I want to hear just a little bit about you and your family.
Sure. I've always been a stay-at-home mom, actually, since our first child was born 27 years ago. It's hard to imagine. And I have 3 kids. My husband and I just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. And all our kids are in their 20s on their own, doing their own thing. The youngest one is married, and that's a challenge. Just trying to parent 20-something kids is just crazy. But it's great. Everybody's happy and healthy, and we're just living the dream.
I love it. That could be a podcast in itself, talking about how to parent teen or kids who are grown up now, because I'm sure it is different because you have less control. It's a little bit, you got to let them make their choices or their mistakes or their successes or whatever it is. And yeah, I'm sure it's pretty interesting.
It is. I always say it's harder parenting an adult than it is a teenager or a 2-year-old, because you just, sometimes they ask for help. Most of the time they don't. And I even hear, why can't you just let me make mistakes and learn from them? So it's hard to watch, but when it all works out, it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's true. And I have so in September, my oldest will be 13. This probably is airing after September, but so my oldest is 13. So we're moving into that teenage year, and it's just interesting how that works. I mean, he's a good kid, so we don't worry too much about him, but it's that letting go, letting them just do their thing and letting them fall, and it's okay. But and then you just want to dust them off. You want to like keep them from falling, but that they learn by doing, and we have to be okay with that sometimes. But
it's like that, when they're little and they fall down and you wait to hear them scream before you go and make a big scene out of them falling. only in a bigger way.
Yeah, I bet. Bigger choices, bigger decisions. That can affect their whole life, right? So,
What happens, and then you're like, okay,
oh man.
here comes the cavalry.
Yeah. Well, I am so excited to have you here. I've been waiting for this day. I just thought it would be a really special interview. But I want to kind of bring us back to 2011 when your journey kind of started, a new journey, and hear your experience with this flesh-eating bacteria. Do you know how you contracted it? Tell us a little bit about it, and what was your timeline and process in this major medical hurdle that you had?
Well, I have no idea where it originated. The doctors couldn't determine it. My best guess is ingrown hair.
Oh wow.
And I contracted what I thought was the flu at the time. And, it was in bed for a couple of days. And my husband kept saying, let's go to the hospital. And I'm like, nah, it'll blow off. It'll be fine. But I got to the point where I couldn't get up. And finally I said, all right, let's go. On the way to the hospital, I found myself not being able to breathe. We actually pulled over and called the ambulance to come and get me. And from that point, I think I have one memory where they tried to put the oxygen mask on me in the hospital, and I'm like really claustrophobic. So I'm like, get that thing off me. I know you have those little tiny nose things, put that in me instead. That was it. And I think it was the next morning I was life flighted up to Dartmouth. They diagnosed, it's called Necrotizing Fasciitis. It's flesh-eating bacteria. They diagnosed it right there in the hospital, and they knew they couldn't handle it. So they got me on the helicopter, and I took off. I was in a coma, medically induced coma, about 3 weeks. And at one point, I do remember them waking me up and telling me, look, we got to save your life. We got to take your hands and feet. And I'm like, what are you going to do? Live or die. This is the decision. So I was like, okay, that was it. I was awake for 5 minutes. And I do remember seeing my hands, and they were black, and they were just rough. They didn't even look like hands. It was horrible. So that's the way I went back to sleep. When I woke up, I didn't have my hands or feet. And I'm sorry, I'm really emotional sometimes.
That's okay.
I just remember praying. My favorite verse was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
Oh, me
Trust
too.
in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct thy path. And I said, okay, this is what is in store for me. I know you'll help me. And I was in the hospital total 2 months, and then I went to rehab for a whole nother month. So I was away from home for about 3 months. And from there, you start the process of getting prosthetics. And I was in a wheelchair for a while, but I was anxious. I wanted to get on. I didn't want to be stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. So the prosthetic leg process went pretty easy. It was hard learning how to walk all over again. But I did get prosthetic arms, really cool. They're called myoelectric, and they run off the nerve impulses in your arms to make the hands, the fingers move and stuff like that. But they were clunky, they were heavy, and all I could do was open and close my hands. And so all these months of going through the process of getting the hands, and I just decided, you know what, I can do more with this. I'll tell you about my little stylus here in a minute.
Yeah, totally.
Than I could with those super expensive, clunky, heavy things. So those went in a bag. and I rely wholly on just my prosthetic legs. Um, if I've got pants on, you would never know because I can walk just like anybody else. And it's kind of cool that, almost I feel guilty sometimes because I do have a handicap placard on my car. And I feel guilty sometimes parking there. And always, always when I have my kids with me and they're driving, they refuse to park there because they're like, you could walk. Why are you taking that spot? That's somebody else who really needs it. Use it. It took me a while to bounce back mentally. I wouldn't call it depressed. I think I was bored, and I didn't know what I could do without my hands. And long story short, that took about 7 years. And it was funny. My kids were always pushing me. My husband was like, come into it. When you're ready, you'll figure it out. I support you. My husband is the most wonderful man on the planet. I support you. I'll help you, whatever you need. Just whatever you figure out. Well, my daughter, she's our middle child, and she's always pushing me. And she comes to me one day and she's like, you know what? I want to go tubing down the river. And you're coming with me whether you like it or not. And I'm like, are you nuts? You're going to take a woman with no hands and feet, stick her in a tube, and float her down the river.
I love it. Had you swum? Had you been in the water at all in between in that 7 years, or
just like in an inner tube?
Okay.
And the thing is, like, never try, because you think, okay, take the legs off. Well, when you're in a tube and you pull up onto the sand and try and get your legs in, there's a lot of leverage that is involved in getting the legs on. You kind of have to come at it from a higher position and go down and push down into them because there's a locking mechanism you've got to snap into.
Okay.
Well, when I'm at the beach on the sand, I can't get them on. So it wasn't something we did regularly. I'd been in the water a couple of times, but mostly somebody was holding on to me or I was in an inner tube. So I thought this was the most outrageous idea she could come up with, but she was not taking no for an answer. And so I had an older pair of legs. The legs that I have now are like hydraulic battery powered, so they can't get wet. But I had an older pair of legs, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to leave these on. It was just all metal. Like, oh my gosh. I cried for 2 days. I was scared out of my mind that I was just going to drown in the middle of this river. So finally, like, nope, we're doing it. Let's do it. So first of all, we didn't even have an inner tube, but it took us half a day trying to even find an inner tube. I think it was July. And everybody was sold out. We finally found one, and we got down there. The river was low, and just there was no current. We kept getting stuck on rocks, and she was like hanging on to me with her arm the whole time. And then we get stuck on a rock, and she'd have to maneuver everybody.
Yeah.
And I would say it took us about 3 hours to go maybe a couple of miles.
Okay.
And the whole time we were like, this is pretty awesome. I can't believe I did this. And she's like, look at you go. You can do anything now. And we came up with this plan that I was going to share my adventures with the world. And everybody kept telling me, you should write a book. Your story is awesome. You should write a book. And I'm like, I'm not a writer. I don't want to write a book. But then the topic of a blog came up, and I thought, this might be something that I could do. So the whole time we're like, we're going to do this. And my daughter calls me Big Tater for some reason. I can't tell you where it comes from, but we were going to title it Tater Takes on Boston, and Tater does this and Tater does that. And thankfully that didn't pan out. But I did end up on One Exceptional Life because turns out it's not so bad.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
I've been blogging and my tagline is really overcoming challenges through faith, gratitude, kindness, and positivity, because those were the things that really made all the difference in my success.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's something I would love to talk about too, is the gratitude side, because but I want to hear a little bit. I want to go back again to the hospital. When you woke up, was there, I mean, what was the emotion? What was the feeling that you first had once you woke up?
I don't know.
You don't remember. That's okay. Maybe that's a good
You
thing.
know, I would have to say probably just, where are we going to go from here?
Hmm.
How are we going to get through this?
Right.
And what happens next? Because I'm not staying in the bed and I'm not staying in a wheelchair. So let's do what we have to do to put this behind us and get on with things.
Right.
And, you know, I say that period of 7 years is almost like a big old pity party, but I think more it was just a period of just, I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was just, okay, just, let's just do what we have to do.
Yeah. Well, and you've been kind of not a busybody, but for 27 years as a stay-at-home mom, you always had something. You always had some sort of business or something that you were doing to try and contribute. And when this happened, it probably for a while there you didn't have anything. So how did that change for you? Was it kind of you just went from doing things to not doing them for a while, or did you try fail and adjust in there?
I had a business that I started in 2002. It's still there. It's still running in the background, and that's a huge old blessing. And but when I came home and was ready to just you know dig into things, I felt like I don't know if this is what I want anymore.
Hmm.
I know that it's not going to go away. It's always going to be there, and I can always, go back to it here and there if I need to, or full time if I want to. But it was just one of those. And even before I got sick, I was in that mindset that I don't know if this is what I want. And so I think that the illness kind of pushed me over that line to make a decision on it. So, but what was cool is the business really, in addition to family, of course, because my husband just was there 24/7.
Hmm.
And so he wasn't working, and his company supported him. My company supported us. The money kept coming in, and God was just there every step of the way. We didn't have any debt when it was over.
Wow.
And, it just, the business was there when we needed it, but it was time to move on.
Gotcha. Isn't that cool though? Like the fact that God just meets our needs. We don't know how it all comes together. And just like he said, if he's going to clothe the lilies, and feed the birds, how much more does he love us and care for us? And it doesn't mean that our plans are all going to work out, but it means that his plan will, and he will prevail and he will take care of us. And I think that's the fact that you came out of it, no debt, and provided for it. That's just amazing. And that just shows that God had control in it all, like that he was overseeing it and going to use it. And that's one thing I know that he probably disciplines us sometimes, but I don't think most bad comes from him. But I think that if we're willing, he'll use it. And I think that's exactly what you did, is took that bad and turned it into a message. And I think that's brave, because a lot of times, and maybe you thought, oh, I had 7 years of maybe a pity party, but at the same time, I think there's a grief process. There's a process of trying to understand what we're going through. And maybe it's longer for some than others. But then instead of just staying there, you decided to do something with it. And I think that's what's really special about your message. And, when your kids were teenagers at the time,
Yes.
and So what did they go through? What were they feeling? It seems like they kind of, I mean, they believed in you because your daughter wouldn't have taken you tubing if she didn't believe in you. So what were some of the things that they experienced through it all?
Um, During the hospital event, um, the youngest one, he's 13. He's always been super emotional. He just crumbled. The other two, and my kids are just bizarre. I don't know how else to put it, but the older two cope with stress and sadness with humor.
Hmm.
And they're very sarcastic. And I think they probably ticked a lot of people off because they would laugh while mom was out cold in a coma, you know? And it was the only way that they could cope.
Hmm.
And, they'd try and bring Matthew, the youngest one, in, and he just didn't want to have anything to do with them. You guys are weird, just go off and do your thing and leave me alone. And, but everybody got through it. And when you had asked me, how did they deal even, later, my family just came together. And, because I sent a text message to my kids yesterday. I said, okay, this is the question that we need to address. What's your answer? And they all said, you know what? We knew we still had mom.
Hmm.
We knew you needed help. They cooked, they cleaned, they helped me any way they could. They didn't complain or, well, yeah, they did sometimes. And they're like, oh, the guy did this. I'm like, look at me. Come on. Everybody's tired of this. But they were awesome. And they just did what they had to do to make everything work and make everybody happy and comfortable and just get the job done. And I think through that, they were always mature, but I don't want to say it made them mature faster. I think it just made them more responsible faster.
Hmm.
And so now I know wherever they are, and not one of them is in my time zone, but I know they can take care of themselves. And, even from my kids think it's weird if there's a 20-year-old or even a teenager who doesn't know how to cook.
Mm-hmm.
They just think that's why not? Everybody should cook. It's great. But it was stuff like that I might have been sitting down, but I was still doing the mom thing the day I came home from the hospital.
Yeah.
And I have a great family.
Oh, that's so cool. It's cool that they like were ready to pitch in and contribute. And I think it was a great life lesson for them because they learned how to do all these things that many people don't learn in their childhood. And I think one of the big things, especially for my kids, that I want to teach them is personal responsibility because I think that's huge. And in life, if we don't have that, then we're going to start blaming other people for our problems or doing all the things and not being willing to take care of ourselves. And that personal responsibility is huge. And the people who have it, they do exude that maturity. So that's probably why you thought the maturity, because that personal responsibility, I mean, that set them up for life. And that was something that you taught them. And I think that is a huge blessing to them. And the fact that they aren't taking things for granted, I'm sure this changed you guys' life in taking things for granted and knowing that we have one life and we need to make the most of it and do what we can with it. And I think that the gratitude is a part of that. So not taking anything for granted is that I want to hear a little bit about some of the lessons that you've learned through it. I'm guessing gratitude is one of them. Did you start using it to kind of help you heal? What was your healing process like in the emotions and the mindset?
Well, they say those, I don't know how many stages of grief, but you can't move on to the next one until you overcome the one before it. And my biggest one was just, how do you live without hands? There's just, I mean, because I have always loved cooking and gardening and flowers, and now I cannot do any of those things. And I'll tell you, I've tried every which way, and it's just that's one thing. The family will sit back and watch me struggle if they know I want to get something accomplished, but they don't want to watch me struggle cooking when they're hungry. So they're like, give me that, and they'll take over, and so I don't cook anymore. And I think it was just mostly confusion with I just didn't know what I was supposed to make with this. You know, I believe there's a purpose in everything, and you know, God allowed this to happen in our lives, but why? What is the message? And that's what took me forever to figure out. And I got to tell you, when I started my blog and just started writing and sharing and learning, oh my goodness, the learning curve for blogging is so outrageous. I mean, here I am 2 years later, and I'm still like spending just as much time learning something than doing anything else. And it was in that immersion that I found why this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this huge light bulb cloud opening up. And what that was is, I mean, everywhere I go, people look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're such an inspiration," and I'm like, "You don't even know me," but because I'm an inspiration because I don't have hands and feet. I don't think that's what makes you an inspiration. And so I kept hearing, "You're an inspiration. You're an inspiration." I'm like, "Well, by golly, let's be an inspiration then." And so, in One Exceptional Life, it gives me an opportunity to just help the people who are struggling, whether it's with a physical challenge, a mental challenge, a financial, it doesn't matter because everybody every day has challenges in their life, but they can all be worked through. And so my aha moment is my blog is my witness for Jesus Christ. And I can drive. We've got the car, there's really not much that needed to be adjusted on the car so that I could drive, but I don't like to. I don't want to leave the house. I'm happy here. I go if I need to, but most of the time it's just, on Saturdays or when the kids are around, we'll get out of the house and go shopping and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here all the time, and that doesn't really give me an opportunity to be a good witness for the Lord. And so I've taken my blog and created a venue to be able to do that, so that when I'm writing about overcoming challenges, then I'm bringing in the fact that, through your faith, through growing your faith, a closer relationship with the Lord, He's going to give you the strength. And in everything, give thanks. Mm. Reach out and help other people, because my family spent a lot of time at the hospital, but there was a local organization that took it upon themselves to bring us meals every single day. And I went in the hospital April 3rd. Thanksgiving, we told them, "You got to stop coming." These women kept coming, and my husband was like, "We're whole. I can cook for my family. It's good. The kids can cook." Nope. They all signed up. You're not going to tell them no. You're not going to rob them of their blessing. Right. And so that's where the kindness part of my message comes in, because that's how the kids got to learn. This is how you treat other people. And then just the positivity aspect is, why be grumpy? It may not be great all the time, but it's still great. And I have never been much of a pessimist. So I think just That was one thing people always told me, you always have a smile on your face, no matter what you're going through. Sitting there in that wheelchair in church, you're still smiling. And, it's just pulling the message together and sharing it with the world that doesn't have to be as bad as you make it out to be. Because there's just so many people that are just like, oh no, I stubbed my toe, I have to take a week off work.
Totally.
And I'm just like, come on. So
That's so true. I mean, it is such an excuse remover. And I mean, so in 2018, I broke my ankle running. I slipped on black ice and I'm still kind of recovering, but it was a huge shock to my system. And just thinking it was just an ankle, it healed. And knowing that I could use it as an excuse and most people would be okay with it. Right. And I think a lot of people would say, oh no, you don't have to do anything. They would have that somewhat empathy or pity saying, no, I get it. I get why you shouldn't feel like you need to do anything or whatnot. And I just think, man, the fact that you're willing to get out there and do something about it and to affect others really just removes any excuse from us if we do stub a toe or do something. Because I mean, just thinking about the daily things that we like to do, like you said, you love to garden and cook, and that was somewhat taken away from you. So where does our passion lie? Does it lie in these things? Because I think running for me, if it was completely taken away from me forever, I'd be super sad. But is it my whole life? And I think sometimes we put our passions into something that does become like an idol or a life for us, instead of putting our trust in God and letting Him be our passion, and knowing that if something was taken away, He's going to give us something new and use us. Is that something that you have processed through as well? Like knowing some of the things that you can't do, are there new things that you can do that He's shown you as gifts?
yeah, I think that blogging has kind of just taken over.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I'm a Christian blogger means I can't share stuff if I don't know it. And, in the blogging community, there are people that write similar topics. And so just friending those people. And, it's funny with everything that's going on in the world. I don't like to watch the news, and, even Facebook can get gory sometimes. But the Facebook algorithm is based on what you focus on most, right? Mm-hmm. So when I'm going through Facebook, I don't see all the negativity because of where I'm surrounding myself, So it's enabled me to branch out and meet some new people. I spend way more time in the Bible than I ever have before. And just by saying, you know what, let's write some stuff down and see what comes of it. Yeah. So it really does consume a lot of my time. I could be working on my laptop from the minute I wake up until I go to bed, if I don't just shut it down when my husband comes home.
Absolutely.
That's good. I mean, there's just, well, you know what it's like to run a blog. It's just overwhelming sometimes, but in a good way for me, because truly, I used to, have you ever heard of the anniversary effect?
No. What is that?
What it is like, if you've ever lost a loved one, or if you've had a major accident in your life, and you just will always remember that date, okay, right? Mm-hmm. And that even without knowing the day is coming, you know it's here because you can feel it. Mm. Have you ever experienced that?
I would say, yeah, definitely experienced that. Just didn't know what that was called.
And so I lost my mom not in the same year. She died in 2002, but it was mid-March when she died. And then 2 weeks later is when this whole thing happened. So every year at the midpoint of March, and I wouldn't even be paying attention to the date. I would get depressed and sad and just cry. And I couldn't figure it out. And all of a sudden, it's like every year at the same time this happens. And that's what the anniversary effect, it happens to a lot of people. And so what I found is, because I was immersed in my whole blogging world, was it last year? Yeah, I guess it was last year. I looked at the calendar, it was like April 15th. And I went to the hospital April 3rd.
Okay.
Oh, I missed it. For the last 7, 8 years, I have been mourning this date and just, but last year it came and went. And I was like, all it takes is a distraction. When you've got something that takes your mind off the sad parts of life, it'll happen without you. And that's a pretty cool thing. And same thing happened this year. I didn't have a problem with those dates, and life went on, and it was good.
Wow. That's cool. So blogging has kind of distracted you from that and kind of become that passion. So that, and that's probably not something you would have ever thought of doing before, right?
Oh, never. Oh, no.
Isn't that funny how things change though? And it's like, nope, you can be used however you are going to be used. And and I think it's cool because God takes the weak, I say weak people, but he takes us from our pain and from our trial, and he wants to use us, and he wants to use us in places we're not confident, because then we can't take the credit for it. We have to give that glory to him, and I always think about that going, it doesn't matter how he uses us. It matters that we're willing. And I think and blogging now has become a joy for you. So let's talk a little bit about blogging, because how do you type? Do you do voice blog? How does it work for you? What does your day look like?
So I don't even remember how it came to be, if somebody suggested it or we just figured it out. But I have this little strap on my wrist.
Okay.
And if you look in like the medical supplies catalogs, it comes with a spoon.
Okay.
So it is really designed to help people just to be able to eat. But I stuck a stylus in mine, and it's how I type. I can type faster with this thing than my husband can type with 2 hands.
Oh, wow.
So every once in a while, I'm thinking I've got this, because I do everything on my phone and then move it onto my laptop when it comes time to publish. But I'm like typing on my phone, and there's this little microphone right there. But sometimes it's just way more trouble to go back and edit everything that they thought you said than it is just to type it myself. So I use my stylus for everything. I can dial the phone or work on the laptop or turn pages in a book or anything like that. So, but I do use my phone for the majority of everything I do, whether it's just writing or social media, advertising, marketing, all that stuff. It's all done on my phone.
Okay. That is so cool. So, what do you think the biggest thing, if you were to take one big takeaway from your experience, what do you think the biggest takeaway was?
I'm going to bring it back around to the gratitude, because, like you said, God uses us when we're weak to do great things. And he also says he takes your experiences and makes you able to help other people with those experiences. It's just like back in 2000, I went through breast cancer. And so as a cancer survivor, I can relate to somebody who's going through cancer. Mm-hmm. And now I can relate to people who lose limbs. So I'm hoping this is the end of the whole qualification period, but it's given me the ability to relate to other people. And so I always say you've got to look for the blessing in everything. You know, the worst things can be happening, but God's going to use it for our good and his glory. So it took me 7 years to figure it out, but I kept searching.
Mm.
And so sometimes you just got to look and find out, where can this be a blessing? How can this be a good thing? What can I use this for? How can I help somebody else? And I guess just in all things give thanks. And that's why, you know, gratitude for me is just, I'm such an advocate for it, because there's just way too many pity parties out there. And I'm like, stop complaining and find something to be thankful for. You know,
Right.
you may not like your job, but guess what? You have a job.
Mm.
You know, you may have this wrong with you or that wrong with you, but you can still do this. And so, yeah, so I'm just, what are you thankful for today? I often put that on my Facebook page. And you would be surprised that sometimes you get a lot of, yeah, I'm thankful, but.
Mm.
And for me, I just like, there's no but. Just be thankful. You're blessed. Own it, you know?
Oh, I love it. And that's something every morning when I'm in my quiet time, I journal. And I journal 3 things I'm thankful for, just 3 gratitudes I have every day. But I think part of it is it just changes that mindset. Instead of thinking about the things you don't have and the negative, it helps you start your day to think about what you do have. Because I mean, we are so blessed and in multiple facets. And that's been a huge thing for me. And I probably just started doing that a few years ago. And I can't imagine, I can't even tell you how much it's changed just my day by doing it. Now I know you have a giveaway or something with gratitude. Can you share a little bit about that and how I'll link it so they can find it? But
I often hear, oh, I write the same old things every day in my gratitude journal. I just, I run out of things to be thankful for. And that's because people don't, they're thankful for their family and their health and their job and their home. Okay. But what else is there? Right. But when you start looking at, I look out the window and see trees everywhere and I'm like, God is so good,
Mhm.
And so what I did is I made, not your typical 30-day calendar, but a 40-day calendar with idea prompts of things to be thankful for. And so that way, it's got things like, what utility did you use today that you can be thankful for? Or, what did you have for dinner that you could be thankful for? And just little tiny things that people just don't automatically go to when they're journaling. They're just like, okay, I wrote that yesterday, but I don't know that I'm thankful for. So it's just a little help for them to do that.
I love that. Now, why 40 days? I have my ideas, but I want to know.
You know why? This is funny because when I was making the calendar, there were a bunch of boxes
How
to
fun.
use like a calendar template, and I was just like, I didn't want to leave all these boxes blank. I just kept filling them in, and I figured let's make it longer and see if it helps.
I love it. Yeah, I was thinking because 40 days is huge, like in scripture and stuff. And it reminds me of the Israelites and how much they complained. And
Oh
that,
yeah.
getting to their promised land would have only taken 40 days, but yet it took them 40 years. So I just think, a day and don't let it take longer. And part of that comes with being grateful. And I went through a season of learning that myself and really studying that. And I think it's just a huge, huge thing. Instead of complaining, how do you turn your complaint into a gratitude? Because in every complaint, you could change it. You could turn it. So I think that's awesome to have those prompts because I do that too. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not thankful today. So I'll just say I'm thankful for my family. Like there's just those days that you're just going, I don't know what I can be thankful for. You're having that hard day. You want to have the pity parties. So having that prompt to say, oh yeah, I had a really good meal today. Oh, I actually slept 8 hours, whatever it is, just something little. Somebody had coffee with me. And I think that that's really cool. So I'll definitely link that so that listeners can grab it, because I mean, gratitude is huge. And if you're not already doing it, try it, because it will change your mindset. I think that's one huge thing. When I talk about mindset, a lot of it comes from changing the way we think, and that comes from gratitude. So what is one piece of advice that you could give someone who's working to get past their fear and into their breakthrough?
Well, first you look to the Lord,
Mm.
and just without trying to. Oftentimes, we go to the Bible because we're stuck, and we're looking for God to tell us what we think we should do. Like, I've got this idea of what I should do. Let God confirm it for me. You know what I mean, in the Bible? But he tells us not to lean on our own understanding. And so, when we're praying, we have to pray and just listen for his soft voice to tell us. And it may not be that day or that week or 7 years later, who knows? But if you keep at it, you'll get the message. And through allowing him to work in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and trusting him and taking chances and course correcting and finding gratitude in the opportunities, in the challenges, in everything, and never ever think that you're never going to get through it.
Mm.
Never give up, never say die, never surrender. The whole thing. Faith and gratitude and positive, let's get her done mindset will get you there every time. I believe that.
Yeah, that's so true. Thank you for sharing that. So if any of the listeners want to connect with you and find you, where can they find you? What platform are you on the most?
I'm mostly on Facebook. I have a One Exceptional Life Facebook page, and I believe you have the link for that too, don't you?
Yep, we'll link that.
Yeah, that is my main social media channel.
Awesome. And then the blog is oneexceptionallife.com.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's really nicely laid out. It's beautiful. The words are beautiful. So go check it out. You will definitely find positivity and kindness and all the things that we should be dwelling on. That's something that I've been working through in this season, even because my feed was negative. And I finally got off Facebook. I'm not on it right now. And the reason for that is because I really felt God really telling me, you need to dwell on what is beautiful. You need to dwell on what's pure, what's lovely, what's right, what's admirable, the verse. And I wasn't doing that, even though I was thinking I was learning and doing all these things. It was like, it was taking my mind, it was putting me in negative places. And so it's so important what do we feed our mind every day, and to really think about, is this lovely? Is this right? Is this praiseworthy? And I think that's what listeners will get from your blog. So I'm excited to keep following it and to have others come follow along as well.
And also, when you do find that negativity, that's when you just unfriend and subscribe and whatever. And it just creates a better feed for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes. Well, thank you. This has been so fun, Wendy. I hope you had a good time. And good. I appreciate all that you shared, so much wisdom and so much light. And just the fact that this is a ministry for you. And I just love that you get to minister to these women and empower them to do big things and to overcome their own excuses and to be led by God.
Very good. Thank you so much.
I hope you were as blessed with this conversation as I was. I just feel like, man, anytime that I'm going to have a pity party, or anytime that I'm just feeling like I don't want to do something or that I can't do it, I'm going to remember that I can do all things through Christ. And I'm going to think about Wendy's story and know that if she can be an overcomer and she can overcome those excuses that she could have had, then I can do the same thing. And I hope that you feel the same way. I would encourage you to grab that gratitude prompt that she has. I will link it for you. And I also encourage you, if you haven't been doing gratitude and writing down gratitudes every day, take a week or 2 weeks or a month and do it. Write down 1 to 3 gratitudes that you have each day. They can be super simple. They can be super detailed. Like maybe you just loved your cup of coffee that day, or you went on a walk, or just something little about your kids. Maybe they said something funny. Whatever it is, write it down and see what it does to your mindset, because I'm telling you, it's one of the best ways to shift your mindset into a positive one full of thankfulness. So I hope you do that. And I hope you tune in next time. Dream huge. And remember, you are a winner. Just run your race. I believe in you.